Hello everyone and welcome back to the shed. If you watched the previous series on the Honda VFR, you may have noticed I've missed a few bits. Not deliberately, but I just ran out of time. It was getting close to my birthday and I wanted to get a good ride with this bike. And before that, it needed to go through an MOT, which it did. It passed, had my birthday bike ride, which is good. Everything went well. But in this video, I'm going to address a few issues that I just didn't have time for back then. So let's get straight into it.
And I'm going to start by pulling off the seat, removing the two bolts at the front so I can lift up the fuel tank. I've had these off not too long ago and I know they're not seized, so I'm confident in using an impact driver. And the best way I found to keep the fuel tank up is using bungee cords, but I need two of them. Now I can take off the side fairings. That should be pretty straightforward. One came off pretty elegantly. Now it's time for the left hand side. And of course I've got one bolt that just spins with the well nut and doesn't come off, which makes it a real pain. But it came off eventually. So I'm going to start you with the cooling system. And for those of you that watched and remember the previous videos on this bike, when I got the bike it had no coolant in the reservoir and it was a bit low in the radiator, in the right hand side radiator as well. So I was wondering whether it burns coolant or it has a leak or anything. But I've topped it up with distilled water and it's still at the right level. Nothing has dropped in some miles, not too many, but I've done a few miles with it since I got it, since I fixed it. So yeah, coolant's still at the right level. I'm going to drain the water out and fill it with proper coolant and we'll go on from there. So I'll take the cap off to help the coolant flow out easier. Put my drain pan under and start with the reservoir. Now with the drain plug on the water pump. Last time I took this out I managed to make a mess, so this time I'm prepared. I wish they would angle it down rather than straight at you. I'll disconnect the slower hose because there's bound to be some left in there. And there's another drain plug right there under the exhaust port, which I didn't know about, but one of my friends pointed out I missed it last time. It is pretty difficult to access though. That was not worth it. That was not worth the effort. Here's something interesting. This drain plug I just took out has a split washer or a spring washer. Used to keep them from spinning, not from actually sealing coolant system. So I'm guessing someone put this in by error. However, I'm wondering whether this explains why I was missing coolant when I first got the bike. There's a bit of corrosion around it, so maybe that kind of sealed it off, but maybe initially this was just leaking because it had the wrong washer on it. So I'm just going to take this off, throw it in the bin and put a copper crush washer in its place. Put it all back together now. So I'll just reconnect the hoses I took off. Put the water pump drain plug back in with a new crush washer. And torque it to spec, one white knuckle in this case. And put the other drain plug back in. Based on how much came out of it, I don't think it's worth the effort, to be honest. But in this case, it was good to find out that it had the wrong washer on it. And we're done, ready to fill it. So I'm going to use the vacuum filling kit again. I'm just going to block off the hose that goes to the overflow tank. Put the thingy in with a suitable adapter. I'm just going to pour it in a container so it's easier to suck out. Very nice color, isn't it? Might as well just fill it up and have a third bottle ready to pour in as it's filling. Connect the airline and we're ready to go. I'm going to prime the system first. And there we go, we've got coolant all the way to the tool. Now we can go ahead and vacuum the system. Once it's up there, I'm going to leave it for a couple of minutes to see if the vacuum drops. That might indicate I have a leak somewhere. And I'll just open the other valve and it's going to fill itself. And there we go, the radiator's all full. I can top up the overflow tank to the right level, which fortunately is exactly how much coolant I had left. Put the cap back on and we're done with the cooling system. Now it's time for the important stuff. I need a phone mount and a charger for my navigation. So I'll start with the mount. I'll just take the plug out of my stem and see which adapter fits best. And it looks like it's this one. Now I need to part off my rubber bung, but I don't trust myself to cut it straight, so I'll do it on the lathe. Probably overkill. It doesn't really matter, but I'll do it anyway. And there we go. We've got a plug. Now just put the whole thing together. And I'll just pop it onto the bike and tighten up the bolt. It feels pretty sturdy and the phone case fits quite well, so I'm happy with that. I wish they included a sticker in the kit though. Would have been nice for my toolbox. And now for a phone charger. I didn't want anything big and bulky on the handlebars on the Honda, so I picked the simplest one I could find on Amazon. And it was pretty cheap. Hope I don't set the bike on fire with it. I've got the same one on the Rocket, and I can just tuck it in and keep it hidden until I need to use it, which is very nice. Now I'll just route the cable to where I think I want it and zip tie it in place. Find a nice place for it under the fuel tank. There's a nice pocket right there for the DC converter. And annoyingly it just comes with a flying lead, so I need to crimp some connectors on that. I'm just going to strip the wires. Crimp some connectors. Solder the ends to be extra safe. And it's ready to hook up to the battery. And we're done with it. Let's see if it works. Here's my old iPhone that I plan to use for navigation. And it seems to work. Happy days. Time for the brake fluid now. Just remember these Japanese bikes use JS screws, so use the appropriate screwdriver. And there we go. The bolts come off nicely. Let's see what's inside. And of course it's starting to drip everywhere. I wasn't prepared for that. Let's pull the diaphragm off. And it's pretty horrible inside. Not as bad as I was expecting though. Let's suck all the old stuff out. I'll have to chisel the rest. Let's see what's on the other side. I'm prepared for a leak this time. And look at that, it's not too bad. This must have been flushed more often. I'll just give it a quick clean and it's ready to go. And here you can see the difference, so change your brake fluid on time. So I'm just taking the rear fairing off to get to the reservoir for the brakes on the back. I'll just give it a quick clean before I open it. And it's pretty dark, but not too bad. It's definitely been replaced more often than the clutch fluid. So I'm just gonna suck out all the old fluid and clean the reservoir like with the other ones. And now I'm ready to fill them with fresh fluid. I'm gonna start with the clutch in this case. And I'm down here at the clutch slave cylinder. I'm just gonna take the dust cap off. Break the nipple loose to make sure it's not seized. Add the reservoir to catch all the old stuff coming out. And there we go, start pumping. The fluid coming out doesn't even look that bad. And remember to keep the reservoir topped up. I don't want to run it dry. And pump some more out to make sure it's all fresh fluid in the system. And when I'm happy with that, top the reservoir back up to the correct level and put the diaphragm, plastic insert and cap back onto the reservoir. And we're done here. Give it a quick clean with brake cleaner to make sure there's no brake fluid residue left. Double check, tighten and clean the slave cylinder. And put the dust cap back on. So it's time to carry on with the brakes. One thing I forgot to mention is that this bike does not have the dual linked brake system anymore. It's been removed by someone in the past, so it just has normal brakes. And this bleed nipple is really tight. I was really afraid I'm gonna break it.
And there we go, it's finally loose. We're ready to go. Put the reservoir on it and start bleeding. And the fluid coming out isn't as dark as the one we've seen in the clutch, so that's good. So when I've had enough on this caliper, just tighten the nipple, remove the reservoir, give it a clean, and we're done. Let's move over to the other side. Just remember to keep it topped up. Fortunately, this bleed nipple wasn't as tight as the other one. And I'm just going to pump the brakes till I get clean fluid coming out of here as well. And there we go, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to remove the reservoir, make sure the nipple is tight, give it a clean and put the dust cap back on. And we're done with the front. Top up the reservoir to the correct level, install the diaphragm and the cover, and we can move over to the back brake. I'm just going to fill the reservoir with clean fluid. It looks like I'm missing the dust cap back here, so I'm just going to crack the nipple loose. Pop the reservoir on and start bleeding, same as on the front. Just ignore the chain and sprocket for now. I don't know what it was lubricated with before, but it was really thick and I had to scrape most of it off with a screwdriver. There's still a lot left though. There we go, we're done here. The back brake is a little bit vague and I was hoping a brake fluid flush will improve things, but I don't think it made any difference in that respect. So at some point I might have to take it all apart. Right, remove the reservoir, just give it a clean. I'm gonna put a new dust cap on it and we're done. Just top up the reservoir to the correct level and put the cap back on. Now I've looked through the manual and I can't see anything on the maintenance schedule about balancing the throttle bodies, which I thought is interesting. There's just something about adjusting the starter valves in there. Let's see what the bike sounds like. I'm just gonna switch the extractor on. Sounds pretty good so far. I'm just gonna let it warm up and do a few other small bits in the meantime. Like lubricating the center and side stand. Well, that didn't go very well. I think it's one of those evenings where I wish I went straight to bed. That made a bit of a mess. Chain tension seems pretty good though. I should have measured it a bit further forward, but it doesn't change much, that's fine. My throttle cables are a bit loose and I have too much play on the twist grip, so I need to adjust that. And I've noticed the bottom cable moves in a slightly funny way, so let's have a look at that. Yeah, I feared this was gonna happen. The bottom one is broken. Oh well, I don't need that right now. I'll just adjust the top one and I'm happy with that for now. And the bike is at 85 degrees C, and it sounds pretty good. I'm not going to try and adjust any valves for now. And that's it. I'll put the plastics back on it another day, but right now I'm getting out of here. And I'm back. Bike's back together, everything's good. I can now take it out for a ride. If only the rain would stop. Thanks for watching and I'll see you again next time. Cheers.